Thanks for taking the time to dial in this morning. This webinar really is all about maximising your opportunities at the virtual Meet the Buyer event. And obviously this is the first Meet the Buyer event, so we've done virtually, so it's challenging for everyone. The operators that are attending Meet the Buyer this year, they've all been here before, or most of them have, although we do have a number of new ones, and they have very clear objectives for attending the event. So their objectives are all set in advance, and they're very clear what they want to get out of the event. So we had really good operator feedback from the 2019 event. The really high percentage saying that they were very likely to contract as a result of attending the event. Operator feedback, as I say, was really good. 38% stated increases. So sort of generally all the business is increasing year on year from Meet the Buyer. So essentially you get out what you put in. Preparation and follow-up are absolutely key. So after the 2019 event, industry partners confirmed that they all had increased inquiries and increased business, saying that they would all definitely attend again. So again, a really good result. So industry objectives for Meet the Buyer from previous years. Again, these are the main ones that have come out in our evaluations: making new contacts, strengthening relationships, understanding what the buyers are wanting, and obviously contracting business is the ultimate objective.
I'm really interested in some of the stats that Dawn presented there earlier, because they really highlight the opportunity that's available for all of the tourism businesses listening in today via virtual Meet the Buyer. So I've been really looking forward to today's session. I worked as a buyer for a very long time. So as we move through the session, I'd like to be placing you within the mindset of the buyer, so you can maybe get some insight into how the buyer is thinking, and by understanding this, that you could maybe maximize your conversion opportunities. So the stats that Dawn showed us there a moment ago are really super for showing us the opportunity that is available via virtual Meet the Buyer. The topics I'm going to take you through, well, you've already had Dawn giving us an introduction and an overview. I'm going to take you through what you need to think about to prepare for this new format for virtual Meet the Buyer. And of course, this is the first time that this event has happened virtually. So an opportunity for lots of new learnings here. I'm also going to take you through tips to maximize conversion opportunities via virtual Meet the Buyer. And when I say maximize conversion opportunities, what I mean is achieve confirmed bookings. I'll also take you through some tips on how to follow up with travel buyers to achieve conversions. So the session is going to last about an hour, and at the end of the session then we'll be taking questions. So as we're moving through the content, maybe make a note of any questions that you might have, and we'll aim to address those at the end. Let's kick off now by taking a look at how best to prepare for virtual Meet the Buyer 2020. So first of all, we'll take a look at what is Meet the Buyer, what's the opportunity there, and then also key dates that relate to virtual Meet the Buyer 2020. So Meet the Buyer is Tourism Northern Ireland's flagship travel trade event. The key focus of this travel trade event is leisure tourism. So leisure travel buyers attend from the international markets. And the key leisure travel buyers are tour operators, travel wholesalers, so the kind of travel buyers that buy in large volume, and online travel agents. In terms of key dates for virtual Meet the Buyer 2020, well, the event itself will happen over 4 days, from Tuesday 28th of July to Friday 31st of July. So I believe people listening in today will be attending, so hopefully you have those dates in your diary. The appointments themselves can be scheduled between industry, in other words, the tourism businesses listening in today, and the travel buyers, the international travel buyers, between Thursday, the 2nd of July, until Friday, the 31st of July. And I'll take you through the management of those appointments in a minute. So in the past, Meet the Buyer has attracted more than 400 attendees, including industry and travel buyers. This year, virtual Meet the Buyer will have 112 international travel tour operators and 141 northern industry partners. Now, the travel trade representatives that will attend virtual Meet the Buyer this year will be representing 17 diverse markets, an incredible opportunity to showcase the tourism businesses in Northern Ireland and Destination Northern Ireland to these travel buyers. So I'll just bring you now into the Meet the Buyer appointments and how these will be managed virtually with this new format for 2020. And I understand some people listening in, some of us are really comfortable with technology and some of us are not. So just rest assured that there are ways that we can prepare to make sure that our house is in order to get the best out of each virtual appointment at this year's event. So through the appointments on virtual Meet the Buyer 2020, we get to create 60 appointments. The appointment system itself is known as Converge. We get to make 60 appointments through Converge. That doesn't mean you have to make 60 appointments. You potentially have 60 appointments that present you with opportunities. So if it were me, I'd be trying to create, I suppose, as many opportunity appointments as possible to create those opportunities. All appointments will take place between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. between Tuesday, 28th of July and Friday, the 31st of July. So it is important to state that the appointment system will give buyers, will prompt buyers from countries that have different time zones to book appointment times that are appropriate for their time zones. This might mean that you need to be a little bit more flexible and therefore arrange an appointment for early morning, say at 8 o'clock, or late evening, 7:30, to facilitate the time zone of these buyers. It is really important to note that each appointment lasts 15 minutes. So now we're going to talk about in the next sections how to maximize your conversion opportunities when you're given a 15-minute time slot and you are presenting virtually to a travel buyer. At the end of the 15 minutes, towards 2 minutes, you'll get a reminder that your appointment time is about to come to an end. But do be aware that there is no automatic close. Your appointment will not automatically shut down. That said, it is really important that you are respectful of the 15-minute time slot. Firstly, because the travel buyer has committed to the 15 minutes, and secondly, because one of your industry colleagues could have a follow-up appointment with that travel buyer, so we wouldn't want to encroach on their time. Just to know that if you've arranged a back-to-back appointment, in other words, one appointment follows straight away by another appointment with another travel buyer, about 5 minutes will be allowed, or exactly 5 minutes will be allowed between each one of those appointments. So you present to your first buyer, you get your house in order, focus on conversions, know then that when the 15 minutes are over, you settle, gather your thoughts together, and you're ready to present again. So 5 minutes to get your head around that change. It is really important to state that it is so important to put your best foot forward. I cannot tell you how important this travel trade event is, and I'm going to explain some key tips and tricks for maximizing opportunities in the next sections. But we would prepare for virtual Meet the Buyer with the same level of diligence and research that we would do for the live event. This is really important. In fact, I would say particularly in light of COVID-19, there are travel buyers out there who are really looking forward to engaging with tourism businesses like yours and to hearing updates from Northern Ireland and news regarding experiences and new experiences that can be had in this destination. So let's make sure it's a positive event for them and for you. The appointments that are created within Converge, so let's just say the buyer requests an appointment of your business, do be aware that you should accept that appointment within 3 days. Otherwise, the appointment times out and will be automatically deleted. This is a really important point for me to raise with you, because a buyer, when they're engaging with tourism businesses, they really want to understand if the business is reliable and trustworthy. Now imagine if I'm based in the United States or Sweden or Italy and I've requested an appointment of you and you haven't even responded within 3 days. That's not going to create the right impression. So for me, I'd be looking at my appointment schedule every day to try to make sure that they're well managed, so that I am creating the right impression for my tourism business, but also for my destination. So this is really important. Every opportunity, every appointment represents an opportunity for a conversion, and I'll explain better how that works in a moment. I suppose we do need to be mindful that, thankfully we have these amazing virtual platforms that are that we can use during these times. But perhaps we would also need to prepare for the buyer that for whatever reason doesn't manage to make their virtual appointment. So I would just alert you to the fact that you're not to be disappointed by that. First of all, if the buyer has requested an appointment with you, it is an expression of interest. And I would be holding on to that contact and following up with that buyer regardless. It is important, and this is a really important point and something that's really new for virtual Meet the Buyer 2020. You'll be allowed to make appointments during the event. So during the live event from Tuesday 28th of July until Friday the 31st of July. So let's just say a particular buyer misses appointment and you have more appointments left in your 60 potential appointment slots. I might just reach out to that buyer and see if there's an opportunity to reschedule. Converve, the Meet the Buyer appointment system, is a really excellent system for matching. For me, it is that's what I call it, a matching system. And actually, anytime we deal with commercial, it is all about matching. I am the business. I present my business offering and my experiences with absolute clarity. Then the consumer or the travel buyer can see without any confusion at all if the service, the experience, or the accommodation provided, whatever it is being offered, is a match for their needs. Once they can establish there's a match, you can move quickly, more quickly, to a conversion, i.e. a confirmed booking. So it's really important, and you'll know this already, you've set up your business profiles on Converve, that writing a good profile, a strong profile, attracts the buyers that are the right match for your business. And in fact, you can see here, I've pulled out a screenshot of the Show Only My Match. The Converve system has a match functionality. So you can go into this functionality and it'll draw up buyers that have ticked similar interests that match the profile of your business. And if you have available appointment slots, it's a good idea to go into the Show Only My Match functionality to see if there are other buyers within that you should be considering for appointments, and you can thereby reach out to them. So bear in mind that in commercial, it is all about matching. So that's the Converve Meta appointment system. I'm going to take you through now, which is something I'm really passionate about, how to maximize conversion opportunities through virtual Meet the Buyer. And as we move through this section, I'd like you to really frame in your mind that the words we choose, how we present ourselves, the images we use, that they are totally a reflection of what our tourism business and what our destination stands for. So the better the job we do in our presentations, the greater the clarity that we achieve, the more we connect with the buyer, the more likely we are to achieve a conversion. So it is important to state that only one person per business is permitted for each virtual appointment. And the person that you have registered to attend, the name of that person will be visible to the travel buyer. So if you happen to want to change the name of that registered person, you can do that in the Converve platform by editing the person profile. If the person presenting on the virtual call is different to the person registered, all you need to do is explain this. So remember, every time we're presenting to travel buyers, our aim is to achieve clarity. We never want them to feel confused. So we bridge the gaps to make sure that they are always on the same track with us. So let's just say my colleague was registered, but I'm jumping on to this presentation with the travel buyer. I might just explain that to the travel buyer by saying something like this. Hi Henrik, my name is Carmel Mooney. I've been so looking forward to meeting you today. As you can see, my colleague Jill Taggart was registered to meet with you. Jill and I work really closely together, and I'm delighted to have the pleasure of introducing our wonderful experiences to you today, and on you go. You've bridged the gap, move to the next step. Of course, when we're presenting via virtual Meet the Buyer, we are presenting through technology. So there are a couple of things that we need to be careful of. First of all, we clearly need access to a device, so something like a laptop, that allows us to engage virtually with the travel buyer. So that device will need to have a camera and a microphone. When we are presenting, we really need to maximize our conversions to ensure that we are presenting with absolute clarity. So watch how you're presenting in front of the camera. If you have a laptop, you may consider raising it maybe with some books or boxes so that the camera is at eye level or a little above eye level. That way we can have a face-to-face conversation with the travel buyer. It is really important to ensure that we have headphones, because by using headphones we reduce sound interference, and it'll make for a more comfortable conversation between you and the travel buyer, a more comfortable exchange, and this is what we're looking for. Try and place your device so that there's light on your face, so that you're really visible to the travel buyer, so that they can see you, so that you're not in a shadow or in a dark place. This would be really useful. It would facilitate the engagement. And finally, think about the background where you're presenting. So for example, if you're presenting from your home, and lots of us are working from our homes at the moment, and there's a lot of distracting food shelves or something going on in the background, that will take away from the conversation you're having with a travel buyer. So try and place yourself maybe against a blank wall that's less distracting. Or if you're presenting from your tourism business, if you're presenting, say, from an accommodation provider business or the activity provider or the visitor attraction, place yourself, remember the buyer will be watching everything in a place that represents your business well and perhaps shares the story of that business. So do think about the background. Through Converse, through the Meet the Buyer appointment system, you will be able to screen share. Now you need to be careful with this, because once you screen share, the buyer will be able to see everything on your screen. So before you go on your virtual appointment, make sure everything else is shut down and only the visual images you might wish to present to the buyer are visible. This is really important. It is important that you would choose really strong images that can be clearly seen by the buyer. And ideally, those images wouldn't have any words. We'd be just looking at pictures. Verbally, then, we will refer the buyer to the pictures so that they understand the context. And let's just say there's somebody listening today who's not comfortable with screen sharing. Well, don't panic about that either, because if it were me and that was my case, I might just print a large, make sure I'd have large pictures, and I would physically show them to the buyer, and I would advise the buyer that I will send them those pictures after our conversation as part of the follow-up. You could potentially send advance information to the buyer via a link through the Meet the Buyer appointment messaging system. So that's something also to consider. You might wish to send them a link introducing your business or some pictures relating to your business in advance of the actual virtual appointment. I would just say it's really important. Buyers are really busy. They deal with the whole world. It's important not to send content that's very wordy. So if you are sending information, make sure it's succinct and make sure the language around it is kind. Finally, I would say practice. I just couldn't recommend, I wouldn't do it myself, attending this virtual event without practicing beforehand. So it is really good to know the buyer will not be in their appointment slot until their designated time for the virtual appointment. So right now, if you've already created appointments, you can just pop into any one of those and activate the appointment button and practice without the buyer being present. And if it were me, I would highly recommend that you do that. So I would see, how am I presenting on screen? Am I coming across well or not? Do I need those books to raise my laptop so I'm seen more clearly? Am I comfortable with screen sharing or not? I can practice all of that now. So by the time I get to the virtual appointment, my house is well in order and I am not panicking. So I can focus on the verbal conversation to achieve conversions. So let's take a look now at the verbal pitch with travel buyers. So firstly, I cannot overemphasize enough the importance of researching and rehearsing. So I've worked as a travel buyer for a long time. I've also worked in commercial roles with accommodation providers and visitor attractions. And I can tell you, I would not show up to an event like this, even with this experience, without practicing myself. There's a lot that has to be gotten across within a short time slot of 15 minutes. And to do that well, you need to have your house in order. So you research and rehearse, and then you're drip feeding words into conversation as if you have not researched at all. And that's a really important thing to know. So the best commercial people in the world are always researched. So a refined verbal pitch is much more likely to lead to a conversion with a travel buyer. And bear in mind all the time when we're presenting, I would say the tone is professional, friendly. Professional, friendly. We always try and maintain this balance. And in everything we say, we're trying to achieve clarity and a connection with the travel buyer. So bear in mind, the travel buyer is looking for the essence. They're looking to hear about your business offering. They're looking to hear about the experiences that you have for sale. And you have to condense all of this into 15 minutes. They are not the end customer that's getting the full experience, the full overnight stay, or the full 1 hour adventure, or 3 hour adventure, or the full 1 hour guided tour in a visitor attraction. The travel buyer needs to understand what you have to offer so that they can recommend you to their customers within a very short time slot. And mastering that art requires practice. Do bear in mind that everything we do and say with travel buyers as we're talking, they are mentally assessing, are you reliable? Are you trustworthy? Would you let me or my customers down? So bear in mind that even if you are the best, the most innovative business in the whole world, the travel buyer will only work with businesses that they know to be reliable because they stake their reputations on the businesses that they recommend to their customers and their markets. That is their job. They will also be trying to establish if you are simply a match for their needs, their customers, and their markets. So let's just take it now that I'm about to sit in front of my computer and I'm going to have a conversation via virtual Meet the Buyer with the travel buyer. What am I going to say? What is the framework for that kind of a conversation? So I'm going to take you through a couple of steps here now that will provide you with hooks for this kind of a conversation. And of course, you know, what I would urge you to do is go through these steps and practice them and then reshape them based on your own style and the kind of language that you would use. So let's begin now with a good, warm welcome. Okay, so the buyer is coming on to the appointment and I want them to feel at home. I want them to feel like they're in my arms, relaxed in my presence. So I might say something like, and I've made up this business, hello Henrik, my name is Mary and I represent the Antrim Adventurers. I've been really looking forward to meeting you this morning. When we speak, our tone is really important, that we make sure that it's engaging, that it's got integrity. Integrity is really important in this world, and that we are literally drawing the travel buyer into our world and into our story. For the second step, I would recommend that you are buyer aware. So in 15 minutes, we don't want to bombard the buyer with a ton of information. This is an exchange between two people. So we need to bring the buyer into the conversation and show them that we have done our research. So to do that, I might say something like this. I see from your profile that you cater for special interest, soft adventure groups. Can I also can I also ask if you cater for FITs too? So FITs, those all-important individuals. And let's just say my business suits FITs, and this is a valid question to ask. But why do I ask the question like this? To show the travel buyer that I've gone to the trouble of researching who they are, that I've gone to the trouble of showing that they are important to me. And this will create a greater connection between the tourism business and the travel buyer. The next step is really important. We need to route the travel buyer. So we live on this beautiful island, but bear in mind that the international buyer lives in a different country. And very often I hear tourism businesses going off on a hack as if the international buyer knows exactly where they're from. Whereas we need to route them. We need to make sure that they understand where our businesses are based. We always place our tourism businesses within the context of their destination, and this is really important. So to do this, I might say something like, my name is Carmel. I represent the Antrim Adventurers. We're located in beautiful County Antrim and part of the wonderful Embrace a Giant Spirit experience brand. We are very proud to be located in a beautiful village overlooking whatever, and point out a detail and paint the picture with a couple of words that allow me to see that. And ideally, you have a really strong visual image that reinforces that. So I can remember as a travel buyer, a lady one day showing me a picture and saying to me, I cannot believe that I have the privilege to wake up to this beautiful place every day. Now you think about if you hear those words back and someone's showing you a beautiful image, what that passion that that lady showed does is she inspires an enthusiasm into the listening travel buyer, and that's really compelling. And that's going to she actually stirs a desire within the travel buyer to want to know what this person is about and their tourism business about, and to move towards a conversion. So do bear in mind, in your conversation, you have immense control to bring the travel buyer to a conversion or not. What you say and do is really, really important. As step 4, I would say we create trust. So bear in mind what I said to you there earlier. The travel buyer views us as a reflection of everything. And this has always been interest of me when I moved from being a travel buyer into commercial roles within accommodation providers and visitor attractions. So the buyer is always watching to see, are you reliable and trustworthy? And if you do an immense presentation, if you really manage the virtual call well with this travel buyer, you're one person sitting in front of the travel buyer, and let's just say I'm an accommodation provider, they will assess in their heads that everything that stands behind you is wonderful as well. You do a good job on your presentation. They will think the chef is amazing, the receptionist is amazing, and the housekeeper in your business is amazing too. You are a mirror of everything. So bear that in mind as you're as you're moving through this conversation, that you reflect yourself, your tourism business, your destination, and your team. And as I said there earlier, the travel buyer is looking for businesses that are reliable, trustworthy, and easy to work with. This is really important. And in our demeanor, we need to show this. A really important next step is setting out our market stall. That's how I call it anyway. And what I mean by that is we're making the buyer aware of what is available for sale. Remember, I am on this appointment to sell. The tourism business is on this appointment to sell. And the travel buyer is there to purchase. So we need to present ourselves. My name is, I represent, my business is all about, and the experiences I have available for you and your customers today are, and we present the catalogue of experiences or services that we have available. So we set out our market stall. So you can see this wonderful adventure business, Walk the Moorings, has done this. So we've got 4 experiences that are available from by this business, 4 experiences that are for sale to the travel buyer. Now bear in mind, I've got 15 minutes. I cannot, maybe in some businesses might have 10 or 20 experiences. I cannot go into each one of those experiences in great depth, and that's okay. My job during this appointment is to express the essence of the tourism business. So I might say something like, and as you can see, and I might show them the document, we have 4 experiences. I'm going to send you more information on all of these experiences after our appointment today. So today, to give you a flavour of what we offer, I'm going to explain to you about experience 1 and 2, and then give a distilled insight into those experiences so that the buyer can get an understanding of the spirit of your business and the kind of services that you offer. And now they're assessing in their head, is this a match for me, my customers, my markets, or not? In light of COVID-19, it would be important, so you can see in a business like this, each experience is informing the buyer about the minimum and maximum numbers that apply to each experience. And of course, in light of COVID-19, those numbers may be adjusted. So it will be important that we give the buyer accurate information in light of COVID-19, say regarding those numbers, and that this information will be clear in our follow-up so that they know how they can book our services during these times. The next important step, and this is a crucially important one, is how to paint a picture with words and images for the travel buyer. So you can find when tourism businesses present to travel buyers that they can overwhelm the buyer with too much content. In fact, they're telling the buyer as much as the end consumer would find out if they were to do the full experience. But when we engage with the buyer, remember we're looking for the essence, the distillation, or else it comes across as being too big a cloud and we can't see through it. So when I'm presenting information to a travel buyer, I would recommend, if you are presenting information to a travel buyer, that you could put yourself in front of a Word document on your computer and create 2 columns on that document. On one side, put the title Mental Images, and on the other side, put the title Bullet Points. For me, the bullet points are the practical information. For example, you might need to wear certain things to engage in your experience, or you might need to, there may be certain restrictions regarding minimum or maximum numbers. The bullet points are like the robotics of the business. So let's just say I'm an accommodation provider. The last thing I want to do is pop onto a call with a travel buyer and say something like this. Introduce my business and then say we have 40 bedrooms, 30 car parking spaces, 1 leisure centre, 2 restaurants, 1 bar, and on I go. Or else I'm just going to bore the buyer. So they're the bullet points. What I do want to do is express the mental images. So words that paint a picture about the spirit, the brand, the personality of my business, and the experiences that are available for sale. So bear in mind that when we are engaging to get conversions with the travel buyer through this virtual platform, the focus should be on the mental images, words and visual images that are giving the buyer the essence, the distillation of what we're about, so that they can establish if there is a match here. This is really important that we paint a really clear picture, and the visual images we choose play a hugely important role within that. So better to have a handful of excellent images that you are referring to verbally, so that the buyer is clearly seeing what you have available for them to purchase. A must asked question, and I'm going to go into this in a little more detail in a couple of minutes, is that you must ask the buyer how they contract. So you ask the buyer, does your business contract directly with businesses like mine, or do you work in partnership with another travel buyer? This is a must ask question at every appointment for buyers that we know want to engage with our business, and I'll explain why this question is crucial when we deal with follow-up in a moment. So keep this one in mind, step 7. It is really important when we're presenting content to travel buyers that we are concise and precise, and we don't exaggerate. So we don't say things like we are the best, the only, the number one in the world, if we're not, okay? A lot of travel buyers and a lot of international markets are really precise. They take what we say literally, and they don't see, there are lots of countries that do not exaggerate in how they use language. So we need to be really clear when presenting our language that it is clear and precise, all the time remembering that the buyer is looking for integrity. So exaggerating, the way sometimes we can be loose with our language can play against us in this regard. So if we have a business that's not the only, the number one, the biggest, the smallest, whatever it is, that doesn't matter. We just focus on the business story and the services, experiences that are available for sale, and we draw the travel buyer into that. That's immensely compelling. So let's focus on the actual story rather than exaggerating it, and presenting that, of course, in its best light. When we're dealing with our 15-minute conversation, we must listen to the buyer. So we're all the time trying to assess if we are matching the buyer's needs, and if our buyer is a fit for their needs, their customers, and their markets. So we can say that what I'm presenting today, do you feel it's a match for you? Do you feel it's of interest to you and to your customers? So to make sure that we're not just speaking at the buyer, particularly through a technology-based conversation, that we are literally drawing them into our worlds through verbal and physical imagery that we're going to show them. This one is really important to me, and we're coming up to the last few key steps here now. Remember local. There is nothing more compelling than knowing a local gem. So somebody who lives locally, knows things about their area that someone from another part of this island, or certainly someone from an international market, will not know. So sharing a local gem is really a lovely thing to do, and it again draws the buyer into the story and into why they should visit your particular area. So a local gem could be, in fact, you need to be careful with this one, because a local gem is often something that's really special that we can take for granted because it's every day in our world. But to somebody to visit your area, it's incredibly, it's an incredible nugget, incredibly special. So if it were me in the middle of conversation, I would draw in a nice little nugget like this, and I just put in an example here. After visiting our brewery, I would recommend that you bring your customers to Jimmy D's famous ice cream store. I love to take an ice cream myself and stroll along the river, the local river bank. That's what people around here like to do. And now I am literally painting a picture. I'm bringing the travel buyer into my local world. And these are the kind of experiences, the real people that they want to engage with. So do think locally, or do think about introducing a local aspect. Step 11 is really crucial for me. When we're dealing with the travel buyer, we must always ask for the business. So you 8, 9, 7 minutes in, you'll be aware that the buyer is engaging. You're doing a really good job. And there'll come at a point in that conversation where you can say to the buyer, do you think there's an opportunity for us to work together? And when you have your piece of paper beside you, you write down whether the answer to that question is yes, no, or maybe. Because from all of the appointments you have through this virtual trade event, you need to be able to establish which leads are really strong, which ones are middling, and which ones don't look like they're going to amount to a conversion. And this is really important for our follow-up afterwards. So remember, this is the world of professional travel management. The buyers are open to you asking this question, and you'll see when you ask it how willing they are to reply. And let's just say they say, you know, they're not so interested, you're not a match for them. Well, you don't worry about that. There are hundreds of buyers. It is all about finding, the same way there are thousands and millions of customers, it is all about finding the right match. So that's part of the job here. And of course, if we set up our profile really well in Convert and the appointment booking system, we are more likely to achieve appointments that put us in a good position to achieve strong matches. The final step, step number 12, is following up. There is no point in attending an event like this unless you follow up. So to bring a lead to conversion, if you think about it a little bit like a closed door, it requires a lot of gentle nudges. And by gently nudging, that door will open. So follow-up is one of the crucial steps in that gentle nudge to getting the buyer aware of who we are, that we're a match for their business, and that they should be working with us. So I would literally say there is no point in attending this event unless you intend to follow up, because you will not maximize your conversions. And over the years, I've engaged with businesses who have bags of business cards in their desks following travel trade events. So do yourself a favor and follow up with these travel buyers. Create relationships that can achieve conversions for you, your business, and your destination. So there are the 12 key steps that I would recommend that you keep in mind in your verbal conversation with the buyer. And I might actually write out that text on a document, like a Word document, and I would practice it. And that's what a lot of really senior commercial people do. And as they're talking then, it looks like they've not practiced at all. They're just drip feeding these words into conversation. And that is what will lead to a greater conversion. If you've also practiced, you can deal with curveballs more easily. So the buyer may ask you something that you haven't thought about before, but because you've practiced, you're totally comfortable in this conversation. And if the buyer delivers a curveball, asks you a question that you weren't, preparing for, you'll be more able to address that because you're coming onto this call totally well prepared. So let's look now at our final topic before we move to questions, and that's the importance of following up with travel buyers to achieve conversions. So I'm going to look at this topic under 3 key categories. Firstly, when we should follow up, yes, no, and maybe opportunities, and how we should follow up. So keep in mind that getting a conversion is about a lot of gentle nudges. So bringing a lead to conversion, which is the function that we're trying to achieve at this really, really important event. So during our verbal conversation with the buyer, we should have already agreed when we will follow up and how we will follow up. So for me, when I'm speaking to the buyer, I might show them, look, this is the information I'm going to send you. Is it okay with you if I send it to you? Should I send it by the end of this week, or would you prefer to receive it later? So bear in mind, the buyers tend to be busy, particularly when they're contracting. So I would not want my information to arrive into their inbox via email, for example, during a really busy time. So they might say back to me, I'll tell you what, if you were to send it through in 2 weeks' time, that would be brilliant. We'd agree a date, I put that date in my diary, and I follow up when we agree. Remember, they're trying to assess if I am reliable and trustworthy, okay? So do be aware that follow-up is crucial. If you don't follow up, it reflects poorly on you, on your tourism business and your destination, and it is crucial for maximising the conversion opportunities through this event, so do bear this in mind. Like we said there earlier, through each appointment with our buyers, we need to ask, do you think there's an opportunity? Do you think there's an opportunity for us to work together? And keep the language nice. You don't have to be robotic. Do you think there's an opportunity? I would love that. So then we assess based on the buyer's response if it's a yes, no, or maybe opportunity, and we can file those leads into low, medium, and high potential leads then, and that will help us in our follow-up afterwards. Let's just say the buyer says there is low or no potential. Well, we're going to remain ultra professional here, because you never know when that opportunity might arise again. So we are never going to close the door. So if it were me, I might say or write something like this afterwards. Dear Henrik, it was lovely to meet you at Meet the Buyer. It's a pity there doesn't seem to be an opportunity to work together at present. We'll keep in contact, and you never know what opportunities might arise in the future. Really importantly, I'm going to be nice here. If I can ever assist you, please do not hesitate to let me know. So I'm going to be professional and polite with all of the appointment opportunities. Now let's say I've got one that's got a high opportunity. Dear Henrik, it was lovely to meet you virtually at Meet the Buyer, and I was delighted to hear that you would feel we'll soon have an opportunity to work together. And on we go. You'll notice at the end of this, it says, I'll call you in a couple of days to make sure you have everything you need, because this is the lead we're going to work a little bit harder with to bring it to a conversion. If it were me, something I often do in personal follow-ups, and we do want to make sure that we don't send out blanket follow-ups, the same follow-up to every buyer. It needs to be a personal follow-up so that they're drawn into our worlds. If something came up in the conversation, let's just say the buyer admired a brooch I was wearing or something like that, I might start off going, thanks for admiring my brooch, because I would want them to remember me in the context of all the conversations that they're going to have with other tourism businesses. So that just might shine a light in their head so that my tourism business remains present. So what's the right route to follow up? Well, this is, and I'm really going to have to really emphasize this, but this is really important. So you'll remember that I reminded you of an earlier step where we ask the buyer how they contract, if they contract directly with the tourism business or via another partner. This is key information because it actually dictates the next step in terms of follow-up. Okay, lots of international travel buyers work with lots of destinations, and therefore they cannot be an expert in all destinations. So if I ask them, do you contract directly with a business like mine, or do you work with another travel partner? If they say to me that they work with another travel partner, then I need to find out the name of that partner. So let's just say they work with, BRAC Tours or Wallace Travel. I need to know that that's their partner. And in that case, then I would also be asking the name of the person that they work with in that travel partner. So this is a very important thing to understand, because if they tell me they work with a travel partner, my job is to follow up with that travel partner with business information, and I actually agree my rates and my contract with the travel partner. This is really important because the travel partner is the one responsible for contracting. So how would I follow up here? I'm dealing with an international buyer who tells me that they work with another travel partner. To the international buyer, I send my business information with public or retail prices. I do not send them my buyer pricing because they're telling me they work with a partner. That means that this partner engages with the contracting. So they are the ones who should receive the buyer rate agreement and the terms and conditions, which I'll take you through in a moment. There are lots of international travel buyers who do contract directly with tourism businesses, and if they tell you that, then to that buyer you can send your business information, and with that buyer you organise the rate agreement and the terms and conditions. So this question is very important to establish who you should be contracting with, and it is a must-ask question in every buyer conversation. So let's just say now, the purpose of meeting buyers via the virtual Meet the Buyer platform is that we establish, firstly, is there a match? Is the buyer interested in my business offering and what I have for sale? If there is a match and we establish that, stage 2 then is that we move to contracting, and that's where rate agreements and terms and conditions come into play. So what kind of information should we be sending to a travel buyer after our virtual appointments? Well, first of all, the travel buyer is going to look for clear information on our business offering and the experiences that we have for sale. Ideally, this information should contain our contact. In fact, it should contain our contact information. Do bear in mind that if we're giving the buyer a telephone number, it should have the international prefix. We're dealing with the international markets. So they should have clear instruction with how they need to book us. Our information should also have our experience brand, so the Embrace a Giant Spirit experience brand should be on all of our collateral. This is really important because this is the experience brand, the umbrella under which your tourism businesses stand. So as we said there earlier, an example of some information that might be sent by a tourism experience like Walk the Mourne. So this would, added to this schedule of experiences, there would be other content regarding the business offering and booking information. So make sure that the information, remember verbally we're trying to present distilled information, and in our follow-up, in our written content, it should be really clear as well. Here is an example. So if we move then from matching to contracting, we need to have a rate agreement. We'll move towards creating rate agreement and terms and conditions documents. Now, a lot of your businesses will find that the buyer come to you with a rate agreement and a terms and conditions document, or a lot of tourism businesses, and I would recommend doing that, choose also to raise their own rate agreements and their own terms and conditions documents too. So this is simply an example of a rate agreement that might be used by an accommodation provider. And you will see in the pink arrows here that I've highlighted some parts that may need to be updated in light of COVID-19, for example, relating to capacity. So it's important that we go out with clear instruction based on the period that we are living in. This is an example of a rate agreement that might be used for a visitor attraction or an activity provider. And you will see under the experiences, there are different experiences noted here. This is the market stall. And in the longer box, you'll see a note underneath where the adjustment numbers in light of COVID-19 are highlighted so that the buyer is crystal clear on these. So this will be important to note during these times. So when we move to contracting, there are two parts to contracting. The first part is the rate agreement, so the rates, the special rates that the buyer are going to receive. And the second part is the terms and conditions document, and these pieces go together. And the terms and conditions document clarify items relating to payments, free policies, child policies, that kind of thing, so that we have our terms and conditions in order. If the travel buyer gives us their own terms and conditions document, it is really important that we clearly go through those terms and conditions, that we understand what each clause means, and that we would only sign the contract in the full understanding of what those clauses are. And if any are unclear or if any require adjustment, we would need to speak to the travel buyer about that. So there we go, guys, a whirlwind tour through the incredible opportunity that's available through virtual Meet the Buyer 2020. I will remind you before we move to questions that the Meet the Buyer system will remain open to you for 1 year after the event. That means you can log on, you've got your username and your password, and you can actually research buyers post this event that will set you up well for next year. That is something that I personally regularly do. And the more research we do about the buyers, the more we learn that each buyer is unique and each buyer is looking for different tourism experiences and opportunities. And we become really aware of the kind of buyers that are a strong match for our businesses. So on that note, I'm going to wrap up this presentation, and I know that we're going to have a couple of questions, and I am dying to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been such a pleasure to have you.
So everyone, if you do have any questions, do feel free just to pop them into the chat and I will pass them through to Julie. But Julie, there's been a few questions just come in throughout the presentation, so I'll start with those if you don't mind. So the first question is, which markets are likely to return to travelling first, do you think?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And actually, if you would have asked me last week, I was debating this a lot myself. And it just happens this week, some people listening in may have seen this, but Tourism Ireland did an update, an industry update, only about 2 days ago. And I listened in on that. And there are a couple of really important insights for Northern Ireland too. First of all, Northern Ireland is showing really strongly in the mindset of as a destination of choice for Ireland's 4 key markets. And these 4 key markets are Great Britain, France, the US and Germany. The research that they have conducted suggests that the markets that are expressing the highest level of comfort with international travel are France and Germany. So the French and the Germans are already traveling domestically. And when they are being surveyed about international travel, these seem like the markets that are going to get traveling first. They have higher comfort levels. That's followed then by Great Britain and then later by the US market. I think it's really important for people listening in today, and I was really intrigued to see this, that destinations with countryside and rural are faring as high in international mindsets as some destinations. So it just shows you through this period we've been living through and are living through, the desire to get out and explore really important. So being aware of that when you're speaking with the buyer through this virtual platform, the connection with nature and green and the great outdoors in these locations really important. And I thought Tourism Ireland brought up a really, really important point in that presentation, and that is to instill confidence in our international travel visitors for future travel plans and consideration of travel plans. They need to see our own domestic customers out and about and engaging with our tourism experiences. So that really emphasises how we should be profiling our own domestic market, engaging with all of your services through, say, social media platforms. So the international markets are basically watching, and they want to see domestic markets also having a nice time at home. So that's something we have control over showing now. So I thought it was a fascinating presentation this week. That's a really good question.
So the next question is, what key opportunities do travel trade provide?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Actually, I should include it in a future slide because travel buyers have, in leisure travel, actually have 3 customer types, 3 key customer types. We've got a tour series, and we've got ad hoc groups, and we've got FITs. So FITs are individual travelers. So when I started off, more than 20 years ago now as a travel buyer, FITs were a really important customer segment, and we thought about them a bit like a carload, 2, 3, 4 people. But actually, over the years, we've seen a huge rise in FITs. So little families or, say, adventure groups coming together and forming parties that become larger. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So it's a really in vogue part of travel, the FIT. So that's a really good question, because I find when I work with tourism businesses about engaging with travel buyers, that many tourism businesses are after tour series. So tour series are the high volume. They tend to repeat over multiple dates, maybe a 15 or a 20 or a 35-seater coach or larger. And a lot of tourism businesses seem to try and get that opportunity first. Now, bear in mind, if this is your first time engaging with a travel buyer, it's your first time meeting them, say, through the virtual Meet the Buyer event, you are unlikely to get a tour series. They're more likely to begin working with you on ad hoc opportunities like groups and FIT. And then when that trust builds up, they may give you a tour series later. It is also important to state that even though in leisure travel we have 3 customer types, tour series, ad hoc groups and FIT, that not all travel buyers may engage in those 3 customer segments. There are some travel buyers that just do FIT. There are some travel buyers that just do ad hoc group. So understanding which customer types they engage in is really important. And before I go to the next question, you might understand I'm passionate about this one. I'll just add this point. When I was a travel buyer, and I probably worked for a medium level one, so not the huge mega wholesalers, if you were to look at the books, about 25% of the revenue came in from tour series. The vast bulk of the revenue came in from ad hoc groups and FITs. Now, of course, this book will change, the revenue will change depending on the travel trade partner you're referring to. But do bear that in mind, that there's often a huge opportunity within ad hoc that tourism businesses can miss with their desire to get to the tour series first. So do keep that in mind, that's important.
Thank you so much, Julie. A very comprehensive answer. I see your passion coming through there.
Yes, totally into this, yeah. Keep them coming, Michelle, keep them coming.
No worries. Next question. Are travel trade looking for COVID-19 policies?
Yeah, so our travel partner is an intermediary, okay? So they work, they're an indirect sales channel. So just think of it this way. I am the tourism business. There is an end customer. The end customer in this case comes to me via the tour operator or the wholesaler. So via an intermediary, the travel buyer. This is a really important thing, and that's in fact why they look for a special buyer rate, because they're an intermediary. That rate is in return for the referral of their end customer. The buyer stakes their reputation on everything they recommend to their end customer, and they are absolutely responsible for their end customer. So the travel buyer is going to want to be able to reassure their customers that when they travel to destinations, that their well-being is looked after. So yeah, this is really important. And I had a scenario during the week where I was working with a visitor attraction, and they were saying that a travel buyer had contacted them about contracting for next year. And the travel buyer was asking questions like, for example, do you have to wear a mask during the guided experience? So if it were me, I would have my policies bullet pointed, clearly laid out so that the travel buyer can see what they are, and then they can give clear instruction to their customers. And of course, you also have the We're Good to Go accreditation. So if you have that, it would be good to tell the buyer that, so that they literally know that you're good to go, that you're set up to manage their customers' well-being and safety.
Okay, and some technical questions coming in just around the platform. So some people saying, is there any further information on the actual platform? What will the virtual event be hosted on? They've used Zoom before. Is it similar platform to Zoom?
Yeah, so the people listening in today who are attending, if you could take that advice that I gave earlier about going into the appointment button and activating, so just bear in mind your future appointments for the travel buyer. So let's just say it's the 12 o'clock on the second day of the actual virtual event. You can today log into that, press that appointment button and see how it functions. So it'll bring you into a screen where the buyer will be visible and where you can screen share. It works. Yeah, it doesn't work in a dissimilar way. It doesn't work in a dissimilar way to Zoom, I suppose. But it is a different platform. The system, as I said earlier, is called Converve, and rather than file sharing, for example, you're screen sharing. So understanding that difference is important, that you're sharing your images on the screen to a buyer. The really best advice I can give around that is that you go into activate one of those appointments now and practice so that you see visibly how you are displaying there.
No, and that's brilliant, because there were a few questions like, can you check your connection beforehand? Can you check the screen sharing things beforehand? So it's great to see that you actually have that opportunity before
really
you have to go live.
And it's really important to see, like, you know, I work a lot in training and mentoring, and normally I'm in rooms live with people. I've had to get my head around a lot of technology stuff there lately myself. I've been doing a lot more virtual training. So I totally understand the person who would be nervous about it. If I was you, I would be on practicing on those appointments to make sure that they go really, really smoothly, you know. So it's nice to know you can practice here, so the panic is removed. You will have practice, don't worry about that. Oh, a really important point, as that one has come up though, and I'm only saying this because this also happened to me on my very first virtual presentation. When you're engaging on these virtual appointments, tell your family, if you're at home, or your colleagues to remove themselves from the broadband, because that will put pressure on your broadband system. So make sure to tell them all to get off it, because you're going to need maximum broadband to present well on virtual, and so that the visuals don't slow down. So do keep that one in mind. That's really important.
Okay, thank you, Julie. And there's just a few more questions coming in here. If I'm going to do a presentation video to share the screen, how long do you recommend it should be?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I've listened to a lot of verbal pitches, and I've been a travel buyer. I've listened to a lot of pitches. I have rarely, and I don't want to disappoint the person listening in, but I have rarely seen people. I can only think of one business that I saw that used video well. So sometimes I find tourism businesses, because we're nervous, you see, this is a different platform, will switch on a video, and on it goes for like half a minute or a minute, sometimes longer. And the buyer is left, in this case, they're going to be out in Planet Virtual by themselves with no interaction. So the time I saw it done well was when the video was switched on and the buyer was brought into the world. In other words, they were showing me, you know, the streets where the experience was happening. So I would use video with great care. And in my experience, I've seen, and I definitely wouldn't switch one on without engaging with the buyer. And in my experience, I've seen tourism businesses doing stronger presentations when they realize that the emphasis should be on what they're saying and using what they're saying, reinforcing that with imagery. So the person who's asked that question will know, I suppose, how they want to present that video, but do take great care, particularly via virtual. Switching on something and letting it run for 50 seconds, or, you know, is probably, it's going to distract from the engagement that you can have with the travel buyer. So do bear that in mind.
Is there an expectation that terms and conditions on cancellations might need to change to reflect what we went through, and also in terms of, as a business, in booking terms and getting prepayments?
I think that's an excellent question. So this is just such an unusual time. So I suppose the best answer to that is, I would say a lot of tourism businesses are offering more flexibility in light of COVID-19. And the way I have been addressing it in new contracts is I am creating a contractual document that shows what the clause is during normal trading circumstances, and that might show, and that beside that clause, so let's just say it's the rate basis or the payment condition or the cancellation policy. Beside that, I'm showing the clause that might apply during COVID-19, and just for the period of COVID-19. And I'll go back to this point in a moment. A lot of those clauses, you know, so for COVID-19 clauses, most businesses, I say, are allowing a little bit more flexibility. So let's just say, you know, the travel plan has to cancel because of a COVID-19 related issue. And the customer is showing that there are a lot of businesses that are offering refunds on that basis, or they're offering credit notes on that basis. So I'll certainly have to think about how that clause presents. But I'm setting them up so that the normal trading clause is being benchmarked on the document against the COVID-19 clause. This is a really excellent question, because the other point I would add on to that is I put a cover note with that document. So on this island, we've had ups and downs over, you know, certainly through the time that I've worked in this area and long before this, you know, we've had ash cloud, foot and mouth. We've had 9/11, and through these periods there have been adjustments to clauses. But there will be a time when we don't have COVID-19 and when we return to normal trading. And so I would say it's a good idea to have a letter that's attached to your rate agreement and terms and conditions that states, that if rates or clauses are adjusted during this time, that you reserve the right to review them, say in 2022, when the world, or whenever the world returns to normal trading. And this is a really important point. So that, because sometimes you find after these difficult periods that a business has adjusted clauses or rates, and then they're left with them, even when the world returns to normal trading. So I would suggest that another conversation needs to happen there. So to answer that question, I suppose more succinctly, the decisions around clauses remain with the tourism business, but I can see at the moment that a lot of tourism businesses for the international markets, if they're interested in supporting B2B business, are softening their clauses. That said, you should never engage with any customer, any partner, without clear payment instructions. This is really important, that you would never engage in a piece of business that would leave you with a bad debt. That's really important,
That leads us perfectly into the next question, Julie. Should we have our own contract, rate agreement and terms and conditions available to buyers as well as receiving their contracts?
Yeah, I actually love that question because I work a lot on rate agreements and contracting. My answer to that would be this. So I've worked with lots of businesses in this regard, and I am aware that there are businesses that have a gazillion things to do, okay? And I'm just thinking of one business that I worked with in my head, and I probably, through various means, I met them over a 2 or 3 year period, and they had never created their own rate agreement. They knew they could, but it was a newer business and they had lots of things to do and they'd never done that, okay? So every time they were just informally emailing for every booking their contractual conditions, maybe just, very loosely, and they might sign the travel trade agreement. Okay, let's take this. Step one, and I'll tell you about the story of that business in a moment. If the travel partner is giving us a contract, the first thing I would say is you really do, I ask for it in Word and I go through it really clearly. And the nice thing about dealing with travel trade is you're dealing with a human person. So you're dealing with the tour operator's contracting, and any clauses you don't understand or that you feel need adjustment, you need to address those with that travel buyer. And you'll see if it's a reasonable request that they will often be flexible on the contractual clause, that you can kind of work it out together. So this world is about meeting in the middle between the tourism business and the travel buyer. So firstly, I would say if you don't have your own rate agreement and your own TCs, your own contractual conditions, that you only sign up to the travel buyer ones with the full understanding of what the clauses in that contract are. Step number 2, ideally, you should have your own rate agreement and terms and conditions document, because it just makes you clearer on what your clauses are. And what I would have done in my past is I would have gone through the contractual clause of the travel buyer and signed once we agreed everything, and I would have asked the travel buyer to sign my rate agreement and my contractual clauses too. And therefore we both assure there's greater alignment between our contracting. Now going back to my person who I have in mind, who after 2 or 3 years created their own rate agreement, so this was the nut they wanted to crack at this time, and they got their head around the rate agreement and the terms and conditions, and they created one. So it's a pretty big deal for this new business. And they came back with this really interesting feedback. So first of all, they were nervous. They'd been informally taking bookings with travel buyers for a really long time. And now they're going out in a new year with a formal rate agreement and a terms and conditions document. And they were nervous about the response to that, except for they found that the travel buyers were delighted, because the travel buyers like to have clear instruction. And through the documents, they got that clear instruction. The other thing, and I thought this was an interesting thing from this visitor attraction, is sending the documents. So they sent it at the end of 1 year for the following year, acted as a reminder to book them. So a lot of businesses now will have a system for recontracting, say around August or September, whenever it happens, to set themselves up for the following year, or earlier around February, March, April, to set themselves up for the following year. And it actually acts as a reminder for the buyer to think about them. It's another nudge in the conversion. And I've seen that happen a lot. So I would say if you're in a position to create your own rate agreement and your terms and conditions, do it. And if you know how to do it, do it. Yeah.
And obviously it's okay to share a PowerPoint presentation on the screen share, Julie?
Yeah, it's okay to share a PowerPoint presentation. I would say if it were me, I would be selecting some really strong images and putting them into a PowerPoint and having that. So I just have everything in one place. There's a lot going on when you're presenting verbally, virtually over, 15 minutes, and you could have the washing machine going on in the background in some of our houses now as well. So I'd make it easy for yourself. Put your images into one document, have that one document ready to screen share. Actually, then maybe me physically, I might show the buyer what I'm going to send them in terms of follow-up. I might say, this is what you're going to receive. Now, the same way I might do during the live event, this is the content I'll send you afterwards. And I'll physically show them that so that they recognize that post the event then. But my images, the key ones, I would have those ready to go on a PowerPoint. That's what I would do, yeah.
Perfect. And one last question. Are tour companies confident of their position and numbers, or is there a pattern emerging of tours with guest numbers a lot smaller than previous, thus affecting price?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it is important to state that irrespective of the current period, that travel habits were changing. Like, for example, there was a greater emphasis, we could see that the last number of years being placed on the FIT traveller. So our numbers weren't down, they were just travelling in different ways. So the FIT travelling, and we saw a lot coming, say, from Italy, family groups of 3, 4, 2, 3 coming together, forming groups then of, say, 12, 14, 15. So there will be a greater focus, there has always been in the last few years a greater focus on smaller numbers. And even tour coach companies, a lot of their numbers weren't down, but instead of using the 45-seater coach, they were now using greater multiples, say, of the 20, 30, 35-seater coach or 18-seater coach. So that's a phenomenon we were seeing anyway in recent years. What you've just asked is a really important question because in pricing, we need to think about this. Let's just say I'm a visitor attraction and it costs €10 to do my attraction, and on a self-guided basis that causes no issue. You can just come in for £10 and engage with the attraction. But let's just say now I do private guided experiences and I know my minimum numbers. I know to achieve, to put the guide out there, I need to achieve £100 to make that worthwhile. Well, the instruction I need to give the buyer is it's £10 subject to minimum 10 people. In other words, it is £100 minimum to have that experience. Then the buyer can decide if 2 or 3 people want to engage at that rate for a special private experience. So that's one way to get around that. So attaching our public or retail price to a minimum number and then advising a minimum spend for an experience is important. So I suppose, look, the buyers are eager to get back selling again. They provide a phenomenal service in terms of customized travel. As I said, we can see from France and Germany that there is an early interest in travel. There is definitely an interest in destinations like these where you can get out and explore the great outdoors. Booking patterns, we're going to have to watch how they progress because this is an unknown for us, but there is definitely, and it was really reassuring to see the Tourism Ireland research that, Northern Ireland and the island of Ireland is very high in the consciousness of our 4 key markets. So that is certainly reassuring,
Absolutely fantastic, Julie. There's no more questions. The questions that come in, really, really interesting and a wealth of information. So thank you so much for your time today. I think it's been very informative and lots of homework now to go away and do in preparation. So thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for taking the time out today to come and listen. The slides will be sent out to you, so don't worry. There's plenty of homework and bedtime reading for you, and I really hope everybody has a really good experience with Meet the Buyer. And any questions, do send them through to the TED team. And thank you again.